Welcome. My name is Bunny Young, and I have a master's degree in counseling and psychology and have been riding horses longer than I have been walking on this earth. And in all of my time in working with programs and working with horses and working with riding, losing one of our equine partners never gets any easier. I wanted to be able to walk alongside these individuals and especially programs that are processing the loss of one of their equine partners and discover and discuss ways that we could create an experience that is not so tragic and be able to truly celebrate these equine lives for what they've given to us and what they continue to do even after they're no longer physically on this earth. So I know it's not a topic that we enjoy discussing, and it's not something at a conference that you'll see a lot of presentations on, but I'm hoping that by the end of this presentation, you'll feel a little bit more empowered on a good plan, how to include your community, include your program, and truly honor these incredible beings for all that they've given to us, both while they're here and after they've transitioned. So, welcome to How to Process the Loss of a Horse with Clients, and especially a program horse if you're working in an EAL or EAP program or a therapeutic riding program. So, let's go ahead and jump right into it. I do want to let you guys know that I am an equine specialist in mental health and learning. Like I said, have a master's degree from Prescott College in counseling and psychology with a specialization in equine assisted mental health. And I do a lot of equine assisted learning programs, everything from working with corporate teams on soft skills and leadership communication to working with therapeutic groups that are struggling with addiction, recovery, and trauma. And I know with all of those groups, especially the ones that come back week after week, whenever we've lost a program horse in any of the programs that I volunteered or worked with, it's always been a very genuine and authentic learning experience for everyone involved. So that is my hope and my intention for this program, is to be able to show you a couple of programs that I've been with that we've processed through the loss of a horse, some of them that I love, the way that they've done it and how they've done it, and share that with you, as well as the positive impact that an unfortunate circumstance can bring. So let's jump into it. So the first part is that I would be remiss if I did not honor a couple of people and horses in this program. So the first person who I wanted to honor and let you guys know is the teachings of Paul Smith. He is one of my professors, instructors, and friends at Prescott College, and unfortunately he passed away a few years ago. And shortly after his passing is when I developed this program, this course, this presentation to share with you guys. And I've shared it at a couple of equine conferences and it's been very well received. But I would be remiss if I didn't credit him and how his loss impacted our equine community and how the loss of equines allowed us to further process not having Paul with us anymore. And another individual that you are going to see in this presentation photos of, as well as I appreciate how he's taught me to honor the lives and the energy that equines bring us, even when they're no longer on this planet and in this world, is Dr. Alan Hamilton. He's the author of Zen Mind, Zen Horse, Scalpel and the Soul, and most recently Lead with Your Heart. And I appreciate that connection that he's given. You'll see a lot of influences from his teachings in this presentation. And there's one more very special individual that you'll see in this presentation, and that's Blackie. And his passing a few years ago is one of the most well-respected, well-done ceremonies that I have been a part of for an equine celebration of an equine's life. And I do give a lot of credit to Dreamcatchers, which is the program where Blackie was and celebrated his life, and how they've continued to do that. So you'll see more about that in a little while, but I just wanted to, if anything looks familiar, those are the beings and humans and equines that made this program and these teachings possible and influenced it. So gratitude to them. So I'm hoping that by the end of this program, you'll be able to see a little bit about how other people make this decision on how to discuss the loss of an equine, the loss of a horse in a therapeutic program. Get some examples, evaluate them, discuss them, pros, cons, what worked, how it made you feel, what maybe didn't work as well as one would have expected, possibly some new ideas to implement into your program, and be able to say why, answer that question. I think that's one of the largest questions that children and adults have, especially children that we work with, is why did Blackie die? Why is Gracie no longer here? Why is Romeo not at the ranch? I want to see Romeo. And there's really no good way to answer those questions, but I think that after this program, you should have some good points of conversation in order to be prepared for the next time that very difficult conversation is brought up. And I'd love to be able to brainstorm other ideas for solutions to the loss of an equine. I'm sure that all of you watching this, unfortunately, have experienced the loss of an equine in your program. And I want to know what your ideas are and continue this conversation, because I don't pretend to be the expert in this matter, but I can present to you some ideas and some thoughts and some experiences from other programs, and we can further discuss some even better ways to be celebrating these partners. And also, lastly, some obstacles and find support through the question and answer session. So just take a look at this slide. When you look at this beautiful green pasture and you look at the horses in the background and you're seeing this memoriam plaque sign there, how does that make you feel? Just spend a moment and maybe take a pen and write down just maybe 3 to 5 thoughts that come to your mind. When I was putting these slides together, I was thinking about translating it to the human aspect of what these signs mean. Essentially, this is a headstone, a gravestone that you would see at a cemetery. And in all of the humans that I've lost, I remember going and visiting the gravestone for the actual ceremony, the actual grave site for the ceremony, the burial, maybe a couple times afterwards. But then I found myself drawn to pictures or videos, or for my grandfather, he was an artist, so his artwork and things, tangible things that were his to be able to talk about, to discuss, reaching out to family members that had relationships with my grandfather and hearing more stories. And I'm drawn to those experiences more so than I've ever been drawn to his gravesite. And this is just my experience, but this is a plaque that is at Dreamcatchers. And all of the groups that we've had that see this plaque, their very first reaction, I would say 80%, if not closer to 90% of the time, is, oh. And then you can almost tell there's this pregnant pause where they want to ask about Jake, but they don't, because they know it's going to be a sad subject and they don't want to bring it up. And it's been this thought, because of the grave sites that we have and how we honor individuals and horses that have passed, that this is the traditional manner. This is probably the most common, is that we put an in memoriam plaque or sign, and there's nothing wrong about that. It's very final, though, and it doesn't leave a whole lot of room to have conversation. It doesn't truly, this sign could never tell you what an incredible horse that this was, or all of the children and adults that's lives were impacted and changed because of this horse. And it's not a conversation starter for sure. I'm laughing about that in the aspect that most people, once they see this sign, just get very quiet. And when you're touring somebody around the property or when you're with a group, it's like the facilitators try to find a quick change of subject because it makes everybody uncomfortable. And these are generalized statements. If you knew Jake, it's a good friendly reminder when you walk by and you see, his plaque and you know where he's buried, and you just smile a little bit thinking about all the memories. But for anybody who didn't know Jake, I can't say that this does him justice as far as the work that he's done. So this is one of the barriers, one of the obstacles psychologically when we see a grave site or when we see an in memoriam plaque, is that it's very final. 2012, Jake's work stopped. And that's not true. It's simply not true. It doesn't honor all of the work afterwards of the stories and the memories and his energy still being very, very present. And, still supporting everybody that works with the program. And for individuals who knew Jake, that in memoriam, there's a great ceremony. And if you could go to the ceremony and you could go to the memorial ceremony, it was a good way to be able to share stories and share feelings and share emotions and honor Jake's life. And I'm speaking just about Jake because of the past slide, but even in a memorial service, there's a lack of closure if you're opposed to public speaking and you don't get to share your memories. Or maybe you were out of town that day and you couldn't be there. So now you have this sign to come and visit and look at, but the sign doesn't represent all of the emotions or all of the feelings or all of the memories. And so there can be a lack of closure with a gravesite memorial ceremony, and just having a plaque there. It really doesn't tell the stories. There could be there's physical consequences in two ways. One is that the sign, especially on an equine farm, can always end up being in the way. And there are some activities that we do that sign ends up being kind of this like stopping point because people are running into it or they're trying to go around it. And then the other physical consequence is a little bit more morbid, but the actual burial of a horse on a program property. So there can be some physical obstacles. There can be, consequences is a strong word that I put in here. But in Europe, when I went and toured some of the programs over there, and there's a horse graveyard, it doesn't bring up conversation. It's not a place that people want to go visit. It's very secluded. People don't really want to, go explore. So there's barriers there, as well as just the quite frank physical consequences of having a 12 to 15 to 2,000 pound animal that is buried, the act of burying them and the space that takes up. So I know that's probably not the bullet point that we want to talk about, but this is all of that psychological mindfare that no one talks about, and that when you roll up to a program or are touring a program and they tell you, oh, over there is our horse graveyard, it is a physical reaction and an emotional reaction for those individuals that weren't a part of that horse's life, or even that were a part of the horse's life. They probably don't want to go visit a space where there is a body beneath the ground. That's why graveyards are so often used in our horror films, right? It's this spooky place to avoid. So there's conflict in the sense that there's probably individuals who like we said, wanted to speak, didn't have time to speak, couldn't be there, can't find the right day for everybody. Maybe somebody wanted a blue sign because that was the horse's favorite color. Somebody else wants a red sign. So it's very, like we said, final. Like I said, there's a final aspect to it, but it's also that it could create some conflict. How much money do we spend? It's a nonprofit program. You know, do we spend $500? Do we spend $1,000? So you want to avoid methods of honoring an equine's life that could produce conflict more so in this really sensitive time. And with the finality, it's a closed conversation. When somebody sees a sign or another method of honoring an equine's life, you want to make sure that it doesn't close the conversation. When individuals see Jake's sign, like, it's 2012, you know, oh, he passed away. Even if they ask us how he passed away, it's still a very closed conversation. It doesn't give an opportunity to say, here's all of the amazing things that Jake did in his life. And the last bullet to discuss is that it can be exclusionary. Those are things that you want to avoid. You want to think about ways to include people, not exclude them from the ceremony, the celebration, and the process, because they're going through a grieving process as well. And so when we're saying, here's what we're going to do, and here's how we're going to mourn, and here's how we're going to celebrate this horse's life, it can be very exclusionary to other people's mourning process. Now I want to take you to a completely different side of the spectrum, and I want to show you some examples of ceremonies and ways that other programs have processed an equine's loss, and show you the psychological aspects that really were beneficial in the way that those programs decided to celebrate their equine's life. And I would not be doing justice if I didn't take you back to Dreamcatchers to show you how in recent years they have really done an incredible job with celebrating Blackie's life. So come with me here to this garden. Just think about how you felt looking at that sign, and now think about how you feel looking at this garden. Again, if you want to write down a couple words, what are some thoughts that come to mind when you look at this place, this area? Is it some place that you would want to stop and sit for a while? Is it some place that you would want to visit? Is it some place that you would want to read a book? Spend some time, take a breath. Is it accessible to riders? So if you're going on a trail ride, is this a place that you could stop by and spend a moment, stand in the shade? So this garden is part of how Dreamcatchers has chosen to celebrate Blackie's life. So here's one of the rocks that is within that garden. If you look, take you back to the garden really quickly. I want you to pay special attention to the benches, that little post right there that you can see that's in between the benches on the center right of the screen, and then that big black and yellow bucket. So here's one of the rocks that is right around that post. It's right between that bucket and that post. And it shares a little bit about Blackie's life as far as how long Blackie was with us. But then it also tells you he never knew a kid he didn't love. So right away, this has told you more than that sign did. It's told you his name, how long he lived. There's a photo and a little bit about his personality. Best therapy horse ever. When I look at this, and when I have individuals that unfortunately didn't get to know Blackie when he was with us, they smile. They get emotional, but it's a positive emotion. It elicits this positive emotion of inclusion and happiness, and, you know, they want to know more. Tell me more about the little boy in the picture, or tell me more about Blackie and his therapy work and the kids that he knew, and the work that he did. I mean, it is just a conversation starter for anybody. It really doesn't elicit the same emotions of finality and, grief and sadness as the other sign might. So around those trees that you saw in the garden, this is what's in the bucket, are a couple Sharpies and then rocks. And so anyone, stranger, volunteer, staff member, writer, can pick up a rock and write a message about their experiences with Blackie or their memories with Blackie or a wish, a message, any of that. And you see there right at the center left of the tree that people actually purchase special rocks and didn't just take them from the bucket, but actually purchased special rocks and brought their own rocks. And individuals from the community, can donate rocks. Companies can donate rocks for community members to write on if we ever ran out of rocks. And so this is very inclusive. It honors the fact that you're able to make a choice on what rock. You're able to make a choice on what message. You're able to leave something that is a part of your memory for somebody else to read and to honor Blackie. So it's a gift to the work that this horse has done. And it's also investing or putting a piece of yourself into this larger community. And you can see from all of the rocks that are around this tree, and this is just a small photo, but all of the rocks that were placed and all of the rocks that were there, how profound this horse's life was and impact was on those in our community and those that rode with us and donors and volunteers and riding instructors, visitors. You're in awe when you look at this. And this does such a great job long after the memorial of continuing to honor the work that this horse has done. And I don't know if you guys have had this experience, but I found myself 6 months after Blackie had passed discussing with one of our other facilitators after a session that we had done. I said, what's really odd is I've never seen that horse behave like that. It was almost like Blackie showed up in the middle of the session and took over this horse's mind. So I was able to go and write that down, on a rock and share that piece of information. It was still evolving the ways that this energy of this horse continued to benefit the program and benefit our lives. And I could continue to share that message and honor this horse because of the way that this memorial was set up. Was that it was ongoing. It was like a living memorial that could continue to grow and adapt and be honored as Blackie continues to give his energy on a daily basis to the program. So that's Blackie's for dream catchers. Here's one that is popular in Arizona. I know of a couple in the Southern California area, and then I know of one in Utah and two in New Mexico. This is a labyrinth. And you can build a labyrinth that the horse can ride in or build a labyrinth that just humans can walk in. And this one in particular is a horse labyrinth. And you could actually marry Blackie's rocks with the labyrinth. And I've seen that where you'll go and have individuals who knew the horse or individuals whose lives were changed by that equine go and place this labyrinth and build this labyrinth. They can write on messages on the rock or they can just place them. And this is something that we did to honor Paul Smith's life in Arizona. Even though Paul's not a horse, we created a labyrinth that you could ride on with a horse. And then the labyrinth became this host that we could continue to build off of if and when we lose other horses, we can add to that labyrinth. And so it's a celebration of life labyrinth. And as you're missing the horse or as you're thinking about this equine, you can go and wander the labyrinth. You can read the messages that are on the rocks or the stones. You can go to the center of the labyrinth and put your own rock, or just put your hand down in the dirt and feel this energy that's at the middle of this creation of a celebration of life. And if you have children in your program that are struggling with the loss, rather than going on a trail ride, or maybe in addition to going on a trail ride, you can go through and wander the labyrinth on horseback and talk about memories and talk about those special times. And it brings that emotional feeling in a positive direction. It gives a purpose and a destination and a sacred place to be able to share those memories. So I'm a huge fan of being able to have the opportunity to direct that emotion into something positive and into a forward direction. And very literally, a labyrinth can provide that for program after the loss of a horse, because it gives us a purpose. There's a clear start, and then there's a clear center. And by the time you get to the center, you can look back out. I have this memory of looking out from the center of the labyrinth and thinking, wow, look at that path. Look at all of that work that we just did to get to the center. And it's very meaningful, because that's the same thing with the horses. Look at all of their work that they did. It's not just about getting to the center. It's not just about this horse passing away. It's about all of the life and the celebration and the work and the memories and every single lesson that they were a part of, every single grooming session that they were a part of. And it's almost like looking across that labyrinth, that each rock represents one of those memories. And it's difficult to look at all of that and not feel the profound impact that this horse's life has had on a program or a community, because you're seeing all of the little things that make up that bigger picture of the special life and lessons and gifts that this horse gave to us. So a labyrinth is always a really, really great option if you have the space at your program. This is Dr. Hamilton, and this is his stallion, Romeo. And Romeo passed away. And for those of you who don't know, Dr. Hamilton is all about energy. His teachings, his learnings are all about the energy of the equine and the human bond. So when Romeo passed away, it was very, very difficult for Dr. Hamilton, and it was very, very difficult for all of us who were a part of his workshops and his team and his herd, because Romeo is just this gigantic, big, beautiful, incredible being, and probably one of the only stallions that I had a positive relationship with. Just a bigger than life personality, and single-handedly transformed so many individuals' lives and even companies' lives, from doing corporate lessons and making better doctors and better leaders in this world. And I could just go on forever about all of the lessons that this horse and Dr. Hamilton were able to bring to the individuals that they worked with. And so when you're thinking about this larger than life horse, how were we going to be able to celebrate and honor his life and make sure that the work and the energy that he brought were still a part of each and every lesson, session, training that we did at the ranch? And what Dr. Hamilton ended up deciding to do was to have Romeo cremated. And so we were able to have a memorial ceremony with Romeo's ashes, and it was very participatory. We shared memories and just all of these different kinds of things, where it was able to be a part of this bigger ceremony and picture. It was very Native American rooted. It was very spiritual, and there was no burial, so it was no, finality. It was a continuation. We were able to see his ashes in the wind. And then one thing that I think that was really special is that in the round pen, where all of the lessons and sessions and teachings occurred, and trainings occurred, as well as where all the other horses did most of their work. We were able to spread just a little bit of his ashes inside this round pen and in the outdoor arena, because that's where this work occurred. And for me, I'm sure there are individuals that would be turned off by knowing that there's, a horse's ashes there. But for me, every time we're doing a join up or doing lunging and these horses are running around in a circle and they're kicking up dust, I'm thinking about this energy that's being released and the fact that Romeo is a part of that. All of those lessons he continues to be a part of. And it's not that his ashes need to physically be there in order to be a part of that, but this is in Tucson, and the Arizona desert is very dry and very hot and very dusty. And just knowing that, Romeo is a part of that makes it so that it's not just a negative, dry, dusty, hot type of day. It's the energy of the hard work that's gone into all of the hours and all of the lessons and all of the people that are there. And he continues to be present and be mindful and give back that special kind of attitude that Romeo could only bring. So I remember being a part of that ceremony. I remember being a part of sharing that commitment and that memory, and that this work would continue to go on and Romeo would be a part of it on a daily basis. And it's something very special that as much as we work to ground our energy and be present with horses, when you're in the middle of a round pen and going through a mindfulness and grounding yourself, knowing that your feet are amongst this energy of this beautiful, kind, incredible, powerful creature that has given his entire life to changing other individuals, is a very positive feeling. It's a very grounding feeling, and it's just very special. So I think that it would take a program that is much more geared towards the spiritual side and energy side of their work. I'm not sure how you would discuss with a child that your beloved equine's ashes are in the outdoor arena. But that's probably an assumption I'm making. It's something to discuss and include your entire community on, because that is part of this process. And that's one of the things that we're going to discuss is that's the psychology behind the 3 examples that I gave you, as far as the labyrinth, the stone garden, and a cremation ceremony. So I can tell you why those were successful. That's what I can share with you from my experience. And then we can discuss, other ways that it's not just the physical aspects that were successful, but I want to share with you 2 other aspects to consider. So this is a page from a farm that is a memoriam page. And what I like about this is that it continues to honor the herd. Right? It still includes those that are not a part of the herd anymore, but they still are. If you are looking for a place to volunteer or a place to donate, these memoriam pages gives you a better, deeper story behind the programs and how they still honor and appreciate the horses that were a part of their programs even after they're no longer there. So I'd encourage you to think about not just the physical ceremony that we discussed in the past 3 slides, but also what the electronic, the virtual, the remote, the social media, what is that piece of honoring an equine's life? When we lost Romeo, I was actually not in Arizona, but because of the way that we were able to include a semi-electronic part of it, I could honor that memory and be able to reach out, even if the horse was in Europe and say, here's a memory that I had, and I can't be there physically for the ceremony, for the memorial, but here's my memory. And also, if I wanted to, here's a donation. So we're going to get into a little bit more about some of those benefits a little bit later in this presentation, but I just wanted to be able to bring that up for you. And then also social media. It's the day and age of social media. And so being able to leave a place for people around the world to not only share their experiences, but also learn the profound impact that equines have. I know individuals who have signed up for riding lessons because they've seen an article or they've seen a social media post about the work that a horse has done, and now they're just celebrating that horse's life. So don't underestimate all of your avenues, and don't just think about this horse died and we need to move on, or we're going to try to do our best to do the celebration, but then we want to put all of these positive things back on social media about our work, and nobody wants to hear about a horse passing away, because it's part of the process, and you can use that opportunity to reach individuals who want to share their stories that they had with that equine, and also individuals who maybe have just lost their family member or a spouse, and they see this article and they resonate with it, and then they want to know more about your program. So social media is another part of this equation on how to process the loss of an equine with your clients. It's also really profound when you have teenagers, especially because I know that some programs do EAL or EAP with at-risk adolescents. For a teenager that only is able to come to the ranch maybe once a week or even once a month, when they're able to process through and read all of these memories and all of these messages that people have left, they start to understand really how powerful this work is. So you're able to reach this whole new population and engage them. And for me, going back and reading the comments and seeing how many thousands of likes in memoriam post gets, or a favorite memory about that equine gets, it is such a good way to be able to know the true impact of a horse's life. Because I'm not at the programs every single day or 365 days a year. And so I'll read stories, and one of my favorite horses, Gracie, passed away last year. And here I am living in this bubble where Gracie was my horse, and I'm the only one who had all of these experiences. And then I look at how many other individuals were impacted by this horse, and I'm thinking to myself, she made me feel like I was the only human in the world, and she loved me the most. What an incredible creature this has to be if there are literally 300 people that feel the way that I did. How big of a heart did she have to make all of these people feel this way? And so when I'm feeling down or when I miss her, I'm able to go back and look at some of the Facebook threads or online and see other photos, other memories, and it's a great way to continue to honor her life. So I discussed the psychology behind what you wanted to avoid when honoring and processing an equine's life. So here's some of the psychology of the 3 physical ways and then some of the electronic ways that we talked about today. They're very inclusive, above and beyond. And remember that on the psychology to avoid, you wanted to avoid exclusion. So inclusion is great. With the rocks, everybody could participate. It was an open invitation, whether you were there that day that the stone garden was opened and they did the ceremony, or whether it's 3 years later and you just wanted to leave a note about how the stone garden, there's stones that say, Blackie, I never met you, but just being able to see how many people's lives you changed really impacted me. Or I just, wandered into the parking lot and didn't really know why I was here, was feeling kind of lost, and being able to spend some time in your stone garden changed my day. So it's respect still, because the stories are able to share. You're able to see in all of the ways that I shared with you, it's respectful to the equine. It's respectful to the work that they've done. It's respectful to all of the stories, all of the lessons that can be shared. And it's not, it doesn't have that finality. I just feel like a sign doesn't do these horses justice, these equines justice. I want to include ponies as well, even if you have a zebra in your program. So I'm not going to say it's disrespectful, but to respect the whole of all of the work that the equine does is really the intention there. And the ways that we discussed, or the examples that I showed you, they evoke a positive emotion, a forward progress. It's a good feeling. You're reminded of all of the amazing things that this horse did and how incredible they are, instead of just missing them and being sad that they're gone. That's part of it, but it's more of a celebratory approach to the processing of a loss of an equine. And you're able to share memories. So all of those ways that we discussed is they're designed to provoke interactions and sharing in whatever way is possible. If you want to talk out loud, if you want to write it down, if you want to put a note, if you want to make a drawing. So it's very inclusive of how you want to process and share your memories, even in the labyrinth. You can wander the labyrinth and speak aloud those memories. You can write a memory and just include it on a rock. You can draw a picture and bury it in the middle of the labyrinth. It's just all. It encourages clients, instructors, volunteers, donors to process in a healthy manner rather than just giving them a verbal chance to discuss the memories and then not another opportunity in any other manner. I feel like with the respect, the ways that we discussed of the stone garden or the labyrinth or even the round pen is incredible to show the honor, right? A sign, I said, a sign just doesn't do that horse's life and all that they gave to us enough. It doesn't do it justice. So being able to honor, truly see all of those stones, see the expansion of the labyrinth, and see this elaborate ceremony is really a much more true way to honor these equines' lives. And then growing, I had shared with you, that the stone garden continues to grow, the labyrinth can continue to grow. And if you're going to do a cremation ceremony, you can, have an anniversary cremation ceremony, whatever that may look like. You can do pavers, and have people donate money to put memories of this equine on a paver and then make a garden out of that, or an entrance to a new barn, accessible ramp, all of those kinds of things. So it's not finite. It continues to grow and it continues to be possible. You can make some kind of habit or ritual out of it, which is always extremely impactful. And that's my next point, is that all of these ceremonies and examples that we discussed are very impactful, whether it's social media that continues to grow in comments and likes, but you can see the vast amount of individuals that are impacted by this loss and that want to continue to celebrate it in a powerful and honorable way. And then really the last point that I have as far as the psychology behind doing it right is that people know how to participate. That's really something to make sure that you're asking yourself. You may have the best idea in the world, but if it is excluding people and if people don't know how to participate and be a part of it, then it's not going to be truly impactful the way that you want it to be. There's not going to be a way for everybody to participate. And I don't know that even with these ways that everyone can participate, but it's very clear how to be a part of it. You can leave a message on Facebook. You can upload a picture. You can write a message on a rock. You can, make a donation in honor of the horse. You can show up for the ceremony in person. You can write a video message. There's a very clear path of how can I be a part of this and how can I, share my memories and honor this equine's life. So it's really important to have that clarity for individuals. I wanted to be able to talk about how horses continue to give. So when a horse passes away, there is an opportunity that they give us, the ones that are left behind, especially when we are in a nonprofit world, using all of the things that we talked about of the impact and the lessons and the ways that these horses continue to give and these stories opens this huge door of opportunity for donors and volunteers to be able to get involved. So reach out, write a press release, and reach out to some local media agencies and just say, we had this horse that unfortunately passed away, but this most incredible thing is happening. We did this stone garden and people are coming from hundreds of miles away to leave a stone and share a memory. Or we have over 500 comments on the post on Facebook from people that never even met this horse. And we just wanted to see about sharing this story with more individuals. And it is incredible how much publicity, and I feel a little bit weird saying that around this topic, but publicity our horses can give us after they've transitioned on. And it's almost like the gift that they're giving us, even though that they're gone, the work that they're no longer physically here, but they're still going to do their work to further the mission and change lives. And how many of us have had the opportunity to have one of those ceremonies and people show up or it's word of mouth, and then we have new riders because of the story that ran in the news or was printed in the newspapers or they saw it on Facebook. So don't be shy about sharing the impact and the ways that you're celebrating this horse's life and the stories and memories that come out of it with media outlets. I told you about my experience with Blackie and the other facilitator after Blackie was gone about 6 months, that there was a herd impact. And there truly is an impact on the herd. I can see it even with Mato and Sonny after Romeo passed away, that there were parts of his personality and parts of him that would show up in lessons from these other horses. So just know that even though that they're gone, it's a good conversation to have with clients and with staff that you're going to see that they're still here. They're still present, and look out for those things and honor those memories that happen. Process it with the horses, especially the opportunity if you build a labyrinth or a stone garden, take your herd out, let your herd be in that stone garden or in that labyrinth. It's not just about the process of the loss for our clients, but also for our equine partners. Being able to have a group of volunteers come out and bring the horses out to, the herd out to see this stone garden or walk this labyrinth is just a really huge, incredible opportunity that is inclusive and not just for the humans. And it's very honorable to our equines. And again, it's really powerful for people who don't know the impact that these horses have had on our lives to be able to see a human equine bond even in celebration of another equine life's loss. So EAL and EFP, or EAT, when in horse transitions and is no longer physically a part of the program, when they're sick or when they've passed on, in these sessions, it's always been really meaningful with my clients to be able to have a session, at least one session, to process that. Even clients that never knew Gracie or Blackie or Romeo, but be able to sit down in Blackie's stone garden and talk about, okay, you said one of the reasons that you're having trouble with addiction or that you're having trouble with communication is because of this loss. Well, let's just talk about where we're sitting right now. Let's just talk about, Jake's sign. Let's talk about in this round pen, what is the energy that you're feeling beneath your feet? And for learning programs, we talk about, when somebody gets fired from a job, okay, that's this finality and there's this, we don't want to talk about it, but what positives can come out of it? And some people say, well, nothing positive can come out of somebody getting fired. And then we'll talk about the stone garden and the positives and the volunteers and the donations that have come from, this story of Blackie and the celebration of all that Blackie had to give to this program. So there are huge, profound opportunities long after the loss to be able to still have learning and therapeutic discussions around that. And, especially how it's impacted the herd, how it impacted the staff. We have Blackie's pasture mate is still not wanting another person in her path or another equine in her pasture. And so she doesn't want to be left alone, but she doesn't want another equine in her pasture. And so we use that story in our EAL and EAT sessions. So don't forget about the value. Even when you're bringing on a new volunteer or a new staff member, you can explain those kinds of interactions. And I feel like that is still gifts from the equine that's no longer there that they give us to continue on their lessons. And that's pretty special and pretty incredible. And we don't want to not use or not discuss or not take to the fullest these lessons and gifts that they continue to give us, even though they're no longer physically at our farm or our ranch or in our program. And the last thing to discuss about how horses continue to give is the anniversaries. On the anniversary, let's continue to honor. Let's share something special. Let's, be able to return back to the promise that we will never forget. And it's another opportunity for individuals that maybe weren't around the first time or the second time to be able to still be a part of it and to share their memories, share new memories. I'm, in an anniversary setting, I'm able to share the story about what happened 6 months after Blackie passed away. And so you can take advantage of those opportunities to continue to, in a healthy way, set up that psychology of healing and of honoring those equines. So wrapping up all of this discussion into this slide is make sure that you're including the herd. And the herd is the horses, the herd's the volunteers, the donors, the staff, the community. Include the entire herd to the best of your ability when you are processing this with clients. Even if you get a donation, from a company, make sure that you're tying it back to honoring that individual. So the Facebook post, would say thank you to XYZ Landscaping, who were profoundly moved by the stories and memories that were shared from our beloved Blackie and donated, $2,000, $20,000. So make sure that you're including the herd when you're honoring and processing. Create an ongoing experience. Create something that can grow and that can live as memories are still being created, as experiences are still being had, as lessons are still being learned. Don't make it finite. Don't make it a closed conversation. Share with the community. Use those media resources. At the foundation of why we do what we do is to impact as many lives as possible, equines and humans. And so you never know whose that story is going to impact. Maybe there's an equine that your program needs that somebody is willing to donate now because they've found these stories that have moved them so profusely. So make sure that you find avenues to share it with the community. As wide as your community can possibly be. If you have individuals that have moved to other countries or other states, send it out to your email list and make sure that they're included as well. And keep it positive. It's sad. It is. No one likes losing a best friend, especially a best friend that has done such amazing and incredible work but let's focus on the amazing, incredible work that they've done. There's a space and there's a time for mourning, but it's healing. The horses wouldn't want us to just be sad that they're gone. They would want us to remember all of the lessons and lives that they have changed and that they have given, and also find a way to remember all of the good and continue to do that, and not just be sad or just miss them, because then we're missing the fact that they're still there, their energy is still present, and their lessons are not yet done. They're not yet done being our teachers. So share the memories, create new ones. That's really important for our equines, is to be able to create new memories, happy memories, positive memories. So don't stop the work that you're doing. Keep going, and know that they are going to continue to provide the lessons and change lives. We discussed in the last slide just a few tiny little ways that happens. So making sure that we know that their work is such an amazing, incredible, beautiful thing, and it just keeps growing, it just keeps going, and creating a process that we can continue to honor that, and letting our clients know that their work is not yet done. You know, in a lesson, I know that you normally ride Blackie. Well, this is Blackie's best friend, and she's going through a hard time right now. Do you think that you could provide her with any support? Or how do you think she's feeling? And how do you think that we can support her and practice some care for her right now? I mean, the lessons are just incredible. So please just know that they're still present and still giving us those in all of the work that you do. I want to leave you with a quote. Those we love don't go away. They walk beside us every day. Unseen, unheard, but always near. Still missed, still loved, and held so dear. I'd encourage you to think about that quote, to share that quote with your clients the next time that you experience the loss of one of your program horses, and ask them what that means to them and the ways that they still feel their horse, or the ways that they still have lessons from their horse, and find those positive aspects, because losing an equine is still one of the most profound lessons that these beings and partners can give to us. Unfortunately and fortunately, it's part of the process. There are things that riding and the connection and the relationship, and to say it's just part of life, it doesn't do it justice. If they didn't mean so much and they weren't such incredible, powerful, meaningful teachers, then them no longer physically being there would not be as devastating. Hopefully this program and this lessons that we've been able to discuss in the past 45 minutes have brought you to a place of understanding of the true value that these equines can give to us even after they're no longer physically there. I appreciate you spending this time with me and allowing me to spend this time with you. And thank you for making the world a better place.
And Bunny, thank you for a tremendous presentation.
Thanks, Mike. So I'm going to do my best to answer as many of these questions as I can, because I know we're limited on time. But Laura had shared with us that she said, I've made picture collages with a plaque for the barn office wall with many candid photos, and I know of a place that has constructed a prayer garden for their lost partners, both human and equine. And Laura, those are great ideas, and thank you for sharing those. If there's any way to make that contiguous and inclusive, to be able to maybe add some more pictures to that, making it kind of a living collage that can be adapted, that's also a great way to continue to have that inclusion and allow for more involvement. And I love the idea of a prayer garden. That's a really great idea. So thank you for sharing that, Laura. And Betsy wrote, labyrinth is so interesting. What is it made of? So the labyrinth, I've seen labyrinths made out of a variety of materials. Most often it's rocks. And that's where I mentioned that you could take a mixture of Blackie's rock garden that had the messages written on the rocks, and then actually build a labyrinth out of it, as we did in Arizona in honor of Paul Smith. One of the best program labyrinths that I've seen, it was a temporary labyrinth that was made out of tack donations. So people had put out a call to the community they were going to build a temporary labyrinth with tax donations and donations for the center, and there was a list and links where people could be able to purchase that. They all came together in a couple hours on an afternoon and built the labyrinth and wandered around the labyrinth, shared their thoughts, their memories, their stories, and then at the end of the day, after everybody left, the center then had all of these items that they could then use for the program. So again, you can use rocks is what's most commonly used in order to build a permanent labyrinth, but you can really get creative with it as well and involve the community. So that was a great question, Betsy. Thank you. And then Melissa typed in, our program leases its horses. Any tips or advice for sharing the ownership of the horse's death and mourning with his or her owners? So that's a really good question, Melissa. And when I read it, the first thing that came to mind is in the presentation when I shared about the fact that I didn't own Gracie, but I felt like Gracie's human. And so in a sense, all of our riders, all of our staff, all of our volunteers are leasing a part of that equine or feel that they're leasing that equine in the traditional sense of the word. So that's kind of a perspective to think about as well. But for the literal aspect of your question, if you build a rock garden or a prayer garden, being able to give the owners a mini rock garden, or if they're out of town, being able to include them in, say, a Facebook live stream of the ceremony or videoing the ceremony, having a videographer there to give them something that they can take home as the owners of the horse, as well as that program could then provide for its volunteers or its staff or its riders to be able to have a memoriam put together of that horse is a really great part of being able to include everybody, whether they're owners, whether they're leased horses or owned horses. So I hope that helps, that the two quick takeaways for that question would be building something miniature, if possible, for them to have it at their barn or their home, as well as one for the center. And the other one would be to find some way to include a live streaming or videographer for that ceremony in that day. And then the last question that I think we have time to get to today is from Anne. And Anne said, we honored our past horses with a drill team presentation at show. Idea adapted from a conference. It had beautiful pictures of horses in arena, beautiful music, DVD made and distributed, which is great, Anne. That's a lot of what I just spoke to as far as having it, the ceremony and whatever memorial choice that you have, make it so that it can be distributed, it can be repeated. Those individuals that couldn't make it on the day can have access to it. I love your particular comment, Anne, because it includes the horses as well as the humans in honoring that horse's life, that equine's life, and their role at your facility and with your organization. So I really appreciate you sharing that, and I think that's a fantastic idea for all of us to consider the next time that we have to go through this situation. And I hope that all of you have some great ideas that you've taken away from this. And I hope that I've made a difficult topic slightly less difficult for your programs and your organizations. And I thank you all for being here. And if you have any other questions, my contact information was a part of the presentation. If not, have a great rest of your virtual conference. And I appreciate you sharing some time with me.